Welcome to this new series of lectures, the Crop Anatomy Lecture Series 10. In this lecture series, we'll be looking at the roots. Now, basically, the roots are generally divided into two categories. We have the primary root and we have the adventitious roots. Okay? The primary roots are those normal roots you are familiar with. Those ones that grow when the plant, the seed germinates, and usually persist throughout the life of cycle of the plants. While the adventitious roots arise secondarily from the stem, that means later in the life cycle of the plant, they arise and then grow into the soil in some cases. In some cases, they just suspend in the air. Okay? They either could be permanent or they could be temporary. The primary root functions just to anchor the plant to the soil and enable the plant also take up water and other soluble substances such as minerals, and to serve as storehouse for food materials. The functions of the adventitious roots are various and numerous. They sometimes grow into the soil and act as primary roots. In other cases, they may be modified into climbing organs, stilts or props, thorns, osterias, etc. What are the characteristics of the roots? The characteristics of roots are: one, they possess a tendency to grow downwards or sideways. Okay, that means they grow towards gravitational pull or they grow sideways. They lack chlorophyll in them. They are not susceptible to the influence of light. Okay, they possess a root cap which covers the apex. They possess endogenous origin and branching and possess root hairs near the apex. These are the types of root systems that I was trying to talk about. We have the primary root system, which comprises of a taproot system and the fibrous root system. The taproot system is for dicots. The fibrous root system are for monocots. Then we have the adventitious roots, which says arise from the shoots or the stem and into the soil, in some cases acting as primary roots. Okay, so there are various characteristics of the taproots compared to the fibrous roots and the adventitious roots. You better study them properly. Now, anatomical characteristics of the roots. We have the root cap. Okay, we talked about the root cap. It says it consists of parenchymatous cells in various stages of differentiation. It is protective in function and recently was discovered to be the site of the perception of gravity. For a plant, a root to move towards gravity, it is the parenchyma, is the root cap that is a site of sensitivity that tells you the direction of gravity. Epidermis. The epidermis is also known as epiblema or pelliferous layer. We talked about this during discussion of the epidermal tissue in the previous video. We said that the epidermis is called epiblema at the root area. Okay? The root hairs develop from some of the epidermal cells a little distance away from the apical meristems. The cells that give rise to root hairs are known as trichoblasts. Root hairs function both in absorption and anchorage. Okay? They have both functions in absorption and anchorage. What are the cortex? The cortex in most roots are parenchymatous. The cortical cells usually contain starch and sometimes crystals. Sclerenchyma is more common in roots of monocotyledons, while collenchyma cells are occasionally found in roots. Okay, so mostly the collenchyma is not found in roots. They are occasionally found, and not all plants that have collenchyma in their root area. They contain both sclerenchyma and parenchyma, but not collenchyma, unless in rare cases, e.g. the monstera plants. Endodermis. This comprises of a single layer of cells differentiating physiologically in structure and function from those on either side of it. The endodermal cells, a band of Suberin Casparian strips, run radially around the cell. We also have the pericycle. This is usually a single layer of parenchymatous cells lying just within the endodermis and peripherically to the vascular tissues. It has a capacity of meristematic growth and gives rise to lateral root primordia. Now, those lateral roots that form from these roots, okay, the primary roots, those lateral roots are due to the pericycle, the pericycle, okay? From the pericycle, they emanate to form those lateral roots you see outside of the roots. Parts of the vascular cambium are usually the meristem which produces a cork. All of them are emanates from the pericycle. It is sometimes called pericambium. Okay, so let's look at the images here and let's see what we're talking about. We have the zone of cell differentiation, okay, above the apical meristematic region. We have the epidermis, we have the root hairs. This is zone. This is epidermis, the root hairs. We have the stele and cortex, okay, the cortex which comprises of the parenchyma and the sclerenchyma, and in some cases the collenchyma. We have the zone of cell elongation, and then we have the zone of cell division. At this point, we're talking about the apical meristem region, where we have the primary meristems comprising of the protoderm, which divides to form the epidermis, the ground meristems, which divide to form the cortex, the procambium, which divides to form the vascular cambium and the pericycle. We have the apical meristem, where all these divisions take place to form all these parts. And then we have the root cap, which we call the site of gravitational sensitivity, which helps to protect all these underlying tissues in the root. Okay, so in this area we get to see the xylem, how it's structured and compared to the phloem. The phloem is towards the pericycle, the periphery, and the xylem is at the central part of the vascular system. We have the cortex, which comprises of parenchymatous cells and sclerenchyma and collenchyma in some cases. We have the endodermis, okay, the endodermis which we talked about, which divides this the cortex from the other parts of the other parts inside, which are the pericycle and then the vascular cambium. Okay, we have the root hairs, okay, which emanates from the pericycle. We have the phloem, which is a part of the vascular system. Okay, so this is a diagram which shows the anatomical overview anatomical structure of the plant root. All right, let's look at the anatomy of the dicotyledonous root. Now we have two major types of roots when we're talking about crop science. We have the monocot, we have the dicot roots, and they differ in their arrangements with respect to the vascular system, their ground meristem as well. The xylem bundles vary from 2 to 6, that is, there may be diac, triac, tetrac, pentac, or hexac. Okay, they vary from 2 to 6. The maximum xylem bundles that exist in the dicot is 6. The pericycle gives rise to lateral roots and secondary meristem, e.g. cambium and phloem. The cambium appears later as a secondary meristem. The pith is scanty and also or could be absent. The epidermis of the dicot root, it consists of closely packed elongated cells with thin walls that usually lack cuticle or stomata. The root hairs are confined to a region absent in the nearest proximity of the apical meristem and die off in the older root parts. The cortex is massive and consists of thin-walled, rounded parenchymatous cells having sufficiently developed intercellular spaces among them. Roots of dicotyledon possess secondary growth and shed their cortex early. Endodermis is the innermost layer of the cortex. It is uniserrate and almost universally present in roots. Pericycle, the layer next to the endodermis, may be uniserrate or multiserrate. Lateral roots in dicots arise from this area. Like I said it before. The vascular system comprises of the phloem and the xylem. The phloem of the root occurs in the form of strands distributed near the periphery of the vascular cylinder, beneath the pericycle. I mentioned this earlier. Xylem form discrete strands alternating with the phloem strands. Okay, this is the transverse section of the root showing the dicot system. We have the epidermis, the root hair, the cortex, that are made up of parenchyma, the endodermis, the pericycle, we have the xylem, okay, and the phloem. The xylem alternates with the phloem, okay. The pericycle, the xylem, and the phloem combine together form what we call the stele or the stele, like I told we made joke of in the class. Okay, so let's go to the Okay, so I'd like to make a correction here. This is supposed to be monocotyledon. Monocotyledonous roots. Okay, so let's continue. The vascular tissue consists of alternating strands of xylem and phloem. The phloem occurs in the form of strands near the periphery of the vascular cylinder beneath the pericycle. The xylem forms distinct strands alternating with the phloem strands. The xylem groups are numerous. They have a polyarch condition, that means they are more than 6, and generally vary from 12 to 20. The center is occupied by pith, which may be parenchymatous or sclerenchymatous. The pericycle, which is usually unicellular, gives rise to lateral roots also in the monocot. In monocot, it usually undergoes sclerification in older root parts, partly or entirely. The cambium is altogether absent even in the later stages, as there is no secondary thickening in such roots. Now, one of the characteristic difference between the monocot and the dicot is that the monocot does not undergo secondary thickening. The monocot roots or stems, they do not undergo secondary thickening like the dicot usually do. The epidermis is commonly known as rhizodermis or epiblema. It is uniserrate and composed of compact tubular cells having no intercellular spaces and stomata. Roots hairs also present. The cortex lies immediately beneath the epidermis, which consists of thin-walled parenchymal cells with sufficient intercellular space, just like the dicot. The innermost layer is called the endodermis, which is composed of barrel-shaped compact cells having no intercellular spaces among them. They possess Casparian strip in most monocotyledons. The endodermis undergoes certain modifications. Alright, this is what it looks like. Epidermis, cortex, down to this point, endodermis. We have the pericycle right after that. We have the protoxylem, we have the metaxylem, we have the phloem, we have the passage cell, thin wall cells in endodermis, and we have the pith. The pith lies at the center. Okay, so that's all for the roots. This lecture 10 series comes to an end here. Kindly observe the differences noted between the monocot and the dicot roots. Kindly observe the characteristics of the root and the anatomy of the root. Okay, so we'll see you in next class. Thank you.